Recording has started. Good morning and welcome to class. Again, I'm Darryl Dunnington, um, head of global learning for DSD, and I will be your presenter today. It is November 24th. Man, days have gone by fast. November the 24th, this is our 10 a.m. session. So we have um, quite a few things to cover. I looked at the schedule. We are a bit behind, so we'll have to make some adjustments to make sure that we get through all the material, that you guys are prepared for the SAE exam. It is a bit more difficult. It does require more skill. The expectation is that you're doing all of the mission exercises and the mission test. You'll see that the required modules are few for you to do. It's a really it's just a review for what's in BAE, but I'm giving you more of the information about implementation and configuration. So remember, no real new information, but the concepts differ. BAE was about design, SAE is about implementation and configuration. So let's get started here. Our last meeting was Thursday, 11/20, 6 p.m. And we covered rules, classes, rule sets, inheritance. Spent a lot of time there. That's a very, very important topic, very important concept. Even though it's only a portion of the application development section, only one of those topics, but what you'll realize is it is the totality of the technology. So understand a rule, understand a class, understand a rule set, and you understand Pega and you understand the technology and how it works. So if you need to review that information, you can go to the recordings section for 11/20, and we do have the podcast there for you where there is a deep dive conversation about those technical discussions. So I would encourage you to do that. I know that I speak English, you guys speak mostly Spanish. We have to use the closed caption for you to read as I'm talking, but I strongly encourage you, use the podcast, the Spanish podcast, to really listen and get the essence of what you should be learning. And of course, if you want to download it from your channel on YouTube, you can go there and do that also. Certificate of Achievement. So you guys should have received your certificate of achievement. Did anyone receive a certificate of achievement? It's been a little bit more than 7 days now. Give me a thumbs up if you've received your certificate of achievement. Anyone? All right, thank you, Fatima. Good, so Fatima received hers. Anyone else? Now, make sure that you take that certificate of achievement and print it out, number one. Number two, put it away someplace in a digital file that is really safe. People will ask you about it. Now, that should show up. So Victor said that he has his also. Good. So they should be coming in. You should be coming in, but make sure you print them off. Put them in a safe place, a digital safe place, so that you can reference those. Now, you should also be able to go to Pega Academy, and you should see your digital badge for BAE. Well, no, we actually have already done that. We've already done that. I'm trying to think, do they give you a no? For BAE, for your certification, you also should have a badge there. So you have that certification badge. We've covered that. And now you got your certificate of achievement. I will thank those of you who have turned in your exam results. I have 10 of them. So if you have not turned in your exam results, please turn them in. It gives me an opportunity to analyze them, look at them myself to see what sections we scored high in, sections that we may need to cover again. I can tell you that in most cases, people score lower in the data and integration section. It's typical for you to do that. So I'll spend more time um, discussing that information later today in the 6 p.m. session. I will talk about the data integration section for SAE. So make sure that you attend that one. That's a very, very important one. It covers a lot of information for data and integration, for implementation and configuration of rules. So you definitely want to sit for that. User experience is a bit challenging also. That's normally the second area. We will continue that focus when we are looking at SAE. It's not any new information added. We'll still talk about the templates and views and controls and grouping those fields. So that's the core of UI. And of course, we have the portal that we have to look at. There's no Pega Express, but a lot of those methodologies and concepts are rolled into the application development. So just be aware of that. You still need to know that. Some of you have not completed the user stories. We may have to go back and do that as a class, but I'll walk you guys through that. It's been a while, but you need to know how to do that. I'm looking at having you guys broken into 3 teams. First thing you'll do is user stories. Well, Ufuk either walk you through it or I'll walk you through it. But that's essential that you understand how to do that and how that is done. This is an update of your status. Again, you will not be able to take the SAE until you submit all of your essay questions. They contain valuable SAE information in them. And the only way that I know that you're prepared is that you've done the essay questions. And please don't copy someone else's. That's not the goal. It's not the goal to get through with it or to get a high score. It's the diligence of you actually doing the work, of you reading it yourself, you finding the answers. The answers are right there in the document. So it's not hard to find. They're right there in the document. You just have to spend the time to do it. And that's going to provide you information you need to know for the SAE exam. And it's going to provide you context for when you interview and you have a conversation. Now you have some content to talk about. And when you are preparing for your interview with a potential employer, you'll know a document to go to that will prepare you for that particular section. So that's important. Get that done. I'll show that every class period. Remember, the certification is on December the 10th. December the 10th is when you sit for your second certification. So get this done. I know you have other classes. Those are just as important as this class, but complete the activities. We're going to push out a LinkedIn post this week. So if you guys have LinkedIn, just know that you'll see your picture out there, information about your university, about your success. We want the business community to know about you, to get prepared, to let them know that we have 18 students who are qualified for jobs in Pega. So get the work done and everything will work out for you. For our session today, I'm going to focus on the low code apps builder extended. Now I realize we're about a week behind. Not really a total week, but 2 sessions behind. So I'm going to go at this pace and we'll just follow along with me. You need to make sure that you have finished the low code apps builder. You've taken the mission test. I looked out there last night. No one has submitted that. Please get that done. Get that done. I'm going to cover the extended this morning, and I'm going to talk about the rules again. So this is my third time talking about rules. Why? Because it's very important. It's the core concept. It's the core technology that Pega is built around. And if you unlock and unleash your skill and understanding about a rule, then you understand Pega. So it won't take long for me to go through these, but I do that because I want you to know that it's just not that much information that you have to go through. There's only 5, maybe 6 modules, and they all have only one topic in them. So it is quite a review. But they want you to do the mission exercises and the mission tests because of configuration and implementation skills. Those are necessary, absolutely necessary to pass the SAE certification. Later on this evening, for our next section, I'll talk about data and integration essentials. So that whole mission, I will talk about that. So that will get us through all of this information. And then I'm trying to think. So, and then Wednesday, I'll come back and we'll start getting caught up where we need to be. Let's see here. When I look at the schedule, so I just want you guys to know, I know that we are about a week behind, but we don't have to panic. We're actually okay. So last week, we should have done all of these sections and start studying for the mission test, but I'll get us caught up this week. We're just right here. So I'll get us caught up on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll actually get close. We'll only be like 1 session behind. And we will push out some of these essays that you have to do so that it's not too much work for you. So just know that I will go in and adjust the schedule. We will be able to complete the course material on time, but I need your assistance to make sure that you do it in a timely fashion. In timely fashion means that this week you should be through at least minimum with the mission test and exercise for low code, mission test and exercise for low code extended. You need to be through with at least those 2. You should be through with all 3 of them, which is also the data and integration essential. So by Friday, if you want to be caught up to where you should be through with those 3 mission tests. And you should have your digital badges posted out there. Minimum, you need to have at least 2 of those done. All right, time zone. So we're both on the same time. So there's nothing for us to look at. Certifications, remember, this is our goal. Our goal is to get this system architect certification for all 18 of you. We have these 3 digital badges that you need to complete by Friday. Minimum, these 2 should be completed by Friday. So that's how you should pace yourself. And of course, the AWS, the AI learning will come. If you have any questions, please contact me and we will definitely be able to assist you. All right, so let's take a look at Pega Academy. So if you get in Pega Academy with me, and if you get into low code apps builder extended, now follow along with me and this will help you complete this module. All you'll have to do is go back and answer the module quizzes. I won't answer those for you. I want you to answer those so that you can think about the information. I need you to follow along with me. I'll get you through the low code apps builder extended, just like I did for the low code. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to get Pega up, Pega Academy up, get into the low code app builder extended, and we'll come down to the first required module. Remember, you only have to do the required modules. Now, in doing the required modules, it will require you to take the little module quiz for each one of the modules. But in this case, there's only one topic, and that one topic covers the one module quiz. So you go in and take that. It takes all of 5 minutes for you to do that. Low code apps builder is what we covered last week. Last Friday, I went through all of those for you. There were a couple of challenges that you have to do. And in this case, there are 1 or 2 challenges that you have to do, but they take 10 minutes, 20 minutes for you to complete those. All right, let's go ahead, and the first required module is automation shape in the case lifecycle. Automation shapes in the case lifecycle. Now, this shouldn't be anything new for anyone. So let's go ahead and get into it. I've already completed it. I wanted to look through to see what was out there. And as I mentioned, there's only one topic in this one mission for you to satisfy the requirement. So let's go ahead and drop into it. It says it takes 10 minutes. I'll give you a quick review. But this is not anything new. Definitely not anything new. Our automation shapes are used when we want to implement a step, and a step in Pega is the execution, or before it's executed, it is the creation of a rule, right? It's the execution of code when it is carrying out a step, evaluating a step, and that rule has been configured and implemented in the workflow at that point in time to say, now it is time for me to be executed. Pega has built several different steps for you, made it easy for you to get access to them. And when you create that step, there's a different view that you can get into. You can get into the process view, which is the flow rule. So the flow rule is the process view. So make sure you understand that. The flow rule is the process view. Let me show you that. Let's go into Pega Academy. In Pega Academy, I just brought up one of the exercises. Doesn't matter which one you bring up. I would encourage you to bring up an exercise so you can follow along with me. In here, you'll see that I have 4 processes: create request, validate request, assign service provider, invoice customer. And when I hover over a process, you'll see here, it shows me that you can configure a process. Remember, SAE is about configuring rules. So it says, okay, you want to see the process designer, where you can go in and configure rules and use the automation shapes. These steps represent shapes or automation shapes that will be executed, that will be configured and implemented as a rule and executed at runtime. For UI, so it's 4 UIs. Here's a decision shape. Here's a change stage shape. Here's another UI. Here's a email automation shape. Here's a create service case type, or create a case type automation shape. Here's a wait in service automation shape. Here's a UI or an assignment. Remember, we call those human steps. And here's another email automation shape. Now, I can go to the process designer by clicking on it, and it will translate the steps into shapes in the flow rule. So there we go. I had two steps, one called review service summary and one called send receipt to customer. When I get into the process designer, those steps become automation shapes. Now, if I want to add automation shapes, you're familiar with this, very simple to do. Inside the process designer, I have the opportunity to select which shape I would like to add. I simply click on them and then they are added to my workspace. And here are all of my automation shapes, along with all the other shapes that are here. These are my automation shapes. So you need to know what each one of these shapes are. I'll quickly go through them. It's very easy. If you want to attach content, PDF, document, any type of file that needs to be attached at that point in the flow, then you can do that with this automation shape. The next three are for stages. So it's for navigation. Maybe based upon some decision, you need to change to a different stage or go to the next stage or change back to the previous stage. You have a automation shape that would allow you to do that. Create case. Create case is if I want to create a case or instantiate a case as I'm in my existing case. The typical scenario that it would create would be a parent-child relationship. I am executing my parent case somewhere in my workflow, in one of my stages, in one of my processes, in one of my steps. I need to create a new case. I have an automation shape that would allow me to create a new shape as I'm going through that flow. If I need to create a PDF, I have an automation shape that would allow me to do that. Maybe I have data that I've pulled from the database or information that I have received from a UI, from the fields in the UI. And they hit the enter key, and behind the scenes, it will execute the capabilities to create a PDF. Now, I want you to understand every one of these automation shapes, all of these that are in orange, they are called automation shapes because they do not stop the flow of the case lifecycle. They are executed and it continues on. Now, you may have a UI, as I mentioned before. In that UI, it pauses, allows you to enter, and then when it hits the create PDF, it then executes it and it continues to go. So that's why they're called automation shapes, because they don't pause the flow or stop the flow. They are executed and then it goes to the next step. If I need to generate different documents, I have the ability to do that. If I need to persist a case, that's a little different than create a case. This is more of an advanced topic, but it could be that I'm on an application and I'm capturing information and someone wants to get back with me and I don't really want to store that information as case type information. I can take it and say, well, let me just persist it so that then I can call it back up later on. So just know that you have a create case and you have a persist case. Persist case is the case exists and I need to save it off so that I can bring it back. Create case means that I'm creating a new case that doesn't exist. Post to post, push notifications, or ways to communicate. So these are ways to communicate. Maybe you need to post something to post. Remember, that's a internal configuration that if you see it on a portal. Let's see if I can show you that right quickly so that you can see what that looks like. Let me change the preview. I think preview brings up the portal for me over in the right hand corner. You'll see a pulse, and that's where I want to post the pulse. I may want to push something out to the community. So this is my portal. And let's see on this portal, let's see if I go and create something. There it is. That's the pulse. So if I needed to post something to that, then that's where it would show up right here. That automation shape would allow that to show up, and whatever I want to send, it gets sent to the portal of that particular user that I'm making reference to in my configuration, and that person would get a message. So that message would show up in the pulse for a given team. Right. Automation shapes. Now, I can push out a notification. Maybe it's a service level agreement. You've seen where I can notify someone, but I can push out notifications at any time. If I need to just send a notification, I can do that. Data transform. Data transform means that I need to take some information and I need to transform it. I need to calculate it. I need to append it. I need to sort it. Whatever I need to do, I can do that with a data transform. When would I use that? Maybe after the user has typed in something on the UI and they typed in their first name and they typed in their last name. And I want to call the data transform because I want to append the first and last name so that it's on one field, because the next screen I'm going to show them is a read-only read-only screen where the first last name is just showed as name and it's in protected read-only mode. I could use a data transform to do that. I could append those two fields together. Or maybe I have a list of files that I have collected off of a screen. Let's say that you're filling out an application and it's showing that you need to enter in all of your schools that you went to, but there's no certain order. Well, after you hit the enter key, I could call the run data transform, use the sort feature, and with that rule, it'll sort those by maybe date for me. Now I can present that information, or I can do calculations on that information later on in my workflow. If I want to send an email, or if I want to send notification, like push a notification and post polls, all of these are communication automations. Send out an email, put the name in, or put the email in, send it out to someone, send a notification, I can do that. If I need to update a case, so like I can create a case, I can persist a case, save it off. I can also go and update a case. So I have 3 automations for cases. Typically, it's part of a child process. Create, persist, update. Those are your automations. And remember, they do not pause the flow. They are executed. Just like a method in regular programming, you call that method, it's simply the calling method gets executed, it comes back to the point, and it continues on. Automations continue on in the flow. The 3 that are blue, these are sub-processes. Okay, these are sub-processes. A sub-process is when I have a flow rule within a flow rule, a process within a process. Right? A process within a process. So that's a sub-process, a flow rule. They are in light blue. So you see they're called sub-processes. So these sub-processes, if you need to have an approval, remember the approval, we have single approval. We have approval where we report through our reporting structure. I then can have a approval. Now remember, in a sub-process, it will have another process, one or more processes within it. So if I click on it, you see, inside of here, there are 3 more sub-processes or 3 more processes. So that's why it is in light blue. It is called a sub-process because it is a flow rule inside of a flow rule, or we could say it is a process inside of a process. And I have what's called my breadcrumbs here that will tell me that I'm in the PX approval. By the way, introduction to naming of properties that are owned by the system. PX, PY, PZ. PX is a read-only property. PZ is a read-only property. I mentioned that before. PZ, PV stream, that blob that we looked at. We had a conversation about that. Those are system properties. PY is updatable. Like for instance, PY status update, PY update status. I believe it's PY update status. We'll look at it. But the PY means that it's an updated property. So just remember that. We'll talk about that. That's an introduction to system properties, PX, PY, PZ. But here is a breadcrumb, so I'm into PX approval. If I go to simple approval, it also has a flow rule in it also. So you see, I can have nested processes, just like I can have nested methods in Java, C++, C#, Python, whatever you are familiar with in traditional programming. Now I'm nesting these processes, these flow rules, and I can expand it. Notice that the breadcrumbs continue. I expand it. And finally, I get down to the innermost process or the flow rule. So it's called PY, cascading get approval. So that means that even though Pega has built this, if you wanted to go and update it, you can because of PY. This PX single approval built by Pega, notice it is locked, so you cannot update it. In the PX read only again, you cannot update it. All right, so these are called the breadcrumbs. All right, so if I wanted to go to Dev Studio, I could do it, open it in Dev Studio, and I would be in the flow rule. So let's go ahead and do that just so that you can see how this works. Now in my automations on my App Studio or on my Dev Studio, it will drop me right into the flow rule. Takes a little bit of time for it to come up. It's changing over to Dev Studio. In Dev Studio, it will open the flow rule for me. You'll see the rules form that will appear. We'll give you a label, the class. So here's the label. The availabilities, we talked about the 7 availabilities that are there. Available, not available, blocked, final, withdrawn. Since it was implemented by Pega, it's in the work dash class. You guys know work dash. So that comes out of the bottom layer of the situational layer cake, out of that Pega layer. The ID, this is the actual name of the flow rule and the rule set. Notice that it's in a Pega rule set with the major, minor, and patch number. So since it's in a locked rule set, this is a great review. Since it's in a locked rule set, then I can only do a private edit. Make sure that is a testable question. When can I do a private edit? A private edit can be done or is done if the rule is locked. This flow rule is locked. The only way I can check it out into my own personal rule set that sits at the top of the rule set stack is through a private edit. That means what? Since the rule set is locked, I can't check it back in, so I'll have to check it in to a higher level rule set, which means doing that 10-step rules resolution flow, it's going to identify that rule in the higher rule set stack first, and that's probably the better choice of rule than one that's in a lower rule set version. If everything remains equal, everything is available. And as a review, remember that all of the rules are actually Java. All of the rules create Java code. Let's see what this Java code looks like. Generates Java. So if you're familiar with Java, then you know what imports and packages are, and creates a public class, rule obj flow for a flow rule in the work class, right? It has a perform, goes through all the Java, and it's fairly complicated. And you can't touch this. None of this can be touched. It is a closed system, but it does generate flow rules. If I want to save, just as a review, remember we could save and do circumstancing. That's that polymorphic behavior. Poly means many, morphic means forms, Greek term, polymorphic behavior, overriding, overloading. We can have rules that are in different classes, one being a parent, being a child, that's circumstancing. We can have rules that are in the same rule set or different rule sets, but they have additional information that you would pass them. That's circumstancing. That's more like overloading in traditional programming. These are the many different things we can do with a rule. But here in the flow rule, as I showed you, this is where we can add all of the automations. All right, so if I wanted to, let's see, did I have any other automations to show you? Let's see. Actually, I can't add any more here. So let's go back to my App Explorer and finish the automations. Now we're back at App Explorer. Remember, these are the breadcrumbs. So I'll come all the way back up to invoice customer. Here's that approval. And let's see, what else did we have in automations? We had search duplicate. So you guys remember when we were looking for duplicate cases, then I could add that automation as part of my workflow. Wait state, if I need to wait until something occurs. So I may have students fill out information if they want to get a scholarship. Now, once they fill that information out, then they hit the button, and then I call a wait state that basically says I'm going to wait now until you can find your completion information or whatever additional information that you can send me. And then at the end, we have a questionnaire. So a questionnaire is part of the automation, which means that Pega will help you easily build and create questions at the end of some process. And this may be an application where you're calling in and you're needing to complete a claim. At the end of that process, they want to ask you 2 or 3 questions about your experience. So here we have a questionnaire where that can happen. All right, so that should cover automations. You guys should be fairly confident in that portion. Not anything new from BAE. Just know that every step is configured by a rule. Now, I didn't show you that. So if I go into, I know we're in the process designer and you saw the flow rule, but I also want you to see that actually, let me go back into Dev Studio. Let me go back into Dev Studio. Let me show you that each one of the steps, automations, are driven by a rule. Think of this shape. Another way to think of this shape is think of an icon on your desktop. You have an icon on your desktop. What happens when you click it? It executes some program. That's exactly what a shape is, except for it's not executing a program, it's executing a rule inside of a Pega application. Exact same concept. So in the case lifecycle, as you start that case lifecycle from the create to it's following the happy path or the alternate path, then when it's time to execute a step, it is taking that configured rule that has been implemented at that point in time, and it's translated it into Java, and it's executing that code. All right, so I'm into Dev Studio. I'll do an open so you can see the difference. This will show you where I can go in and configure the rule or rules that are associated with it. So there's a service level agreement that's attached to it. I could add specifications, and here's the advanced. The advanced, you'll see that I can configure. Notice all of this is about configuration. I can configure the work status. I could configure how screens will be navigated. I can add local action. I can add notifications. I can add tickets or exceptions. I can find ways to optimize and add properties here. So in this particular shape, it's actually allowing me to configure multiple rules. So multiple rules are supported by one shape sometimes. So it could be a one-to-many relationship in having a shape and creating a rule. And remember that this represents a UI. So what you still don't see is there's a portal that is running in. There's a template that's associated with the portal. There's a view that's associated with that template. And there are fields that are within that. So it's not just a one-to-one relationship. One shape can represent one or more rules. In this case, you'll see that in most of the automations are already pre-configured for you. Some of the work is already done, and all they're asking you to fill in some information so that they can finish it. In this case, it is a message. So the asterisk will indicate that this is the required fields for you to fill in. And you have all other things that you can set here. So this flow rule, invoice customer, let's see if we can find it in the App Explorer. In the App Explorer, it's under the work assistance request. So here's the class. Remember, this is the class that it's in. Now we have to figure out the category. Well, the category is fairly easy, right? If this is a flow rule, and I know that I am in the process designer, so I need to go to the process category. Okay. Now, I have all of these case types, all of the case types that are here. How do I find this flow rule called invoice customer? Well, I have to know it's a flow rule. It's not a flow action rule. So look here, it tells you the rule type. I'm going to edit this rule type. This is the label name. This is the actual name. So I'm really looking for the ID that's there. And there it is, invoice customer. This has allowed me to find the actual rule. I click on it, it's going to take me right here, right back to the same place. There it is. All right, so hopefully you got a good understanding of automations, how they associate with certain use cases, and how I can go from the app studio to the dev studio into the actual flow rule. On the rules form, you see the rules type, you see the label name, you see the availabilities, you see the class that it is applied to, you see the actual ID, the name, and you see the rule set. And now I can delete it. I have actions where I can look at the Java, many other features that I'll talk about later on. I can save it as is. I can save it with circumstancing, or I could save it and specialize it. That's circumstancing also by class or rule set. So I don't have to save it back in the same rule set. I could save it in a different rule set. I don't have to save it in the same class. I can save it in a different class. That's automations. So we covered all of these shapes. Now, what we didn't cover, I forgot to do that. What we didn't cover, I don't know if it was even in this version of the application. You have to get 24.2. No, we were in 24.2. But the Connect Generative AI, that is an automation also. That automation will allow you, as you're going through the flow, that you can create or you can have a predefined prompt. If you understand how to prompt, you guys use chat box like ChatGPT, Claude, Seek, Gemini, any of those, you should be familiar with those. You type in a prompt, it brings back information. Now in my workflow, I can do that. That could be one of the steps within my workflow that I've gathered all of these information, maybe from 4 screens. You saw, remember the create screens, the create stage we were in, there were 4 screens. Capture that information, build a dynamic prompt, call the Connect Generative AI. I can get information back. Remember, information comes back as either unstructured, could be text that it's going to come back as, can be structured, it could be like a record that's bringing back information in record format, or it could be a list of information that comes back. Okay, so don't forget, you do have the Connect Generative AI. And all the others show up here. Okay, change stage. All right, so as you go through this, is make sure after class you go back or you answer these questions right quickly, and then you go right to the module quiz, and you have completed that particular section. Okay, now you finish the module quiz, come back, So the next one you'd have to do, so you don't have to do any of these. You should know and understand how to pause and resume with the wait state. And then you get into validate. Now, you have these 4 to do. Now, notice that the challenges are very simple. 20 minutes, 10 minutes, very easy. You have 1 topic inside this module, 2 topics inside this module. So let's go ahead and look into validating data. Data validation, there's only 1 topic there. So data validation tells us what? How do we make sure that our information is correct? You have a form, you have a view, you have a control. How do you make sure that the information that is entered in that control is valid information? If you have an age, you don't want them to enter in characters, A, B, C, D. If you have a zip code, you don't want them entering in the address. So data validation, how do we make sure that it's the right type of information? Maybe we need to restrict the possible values with a drop down. Or maybe it just needs to fit based upon, is that what they're saying? Business logic. I need to evaluate it that I've asked you to enter in a birth date. If you enter in something that in the future, well, that's not the right date. So I need to evaluate that with business logic. So those are ways to validate. Make sure I have the right field type. If I have the right field type, I have a decimal or I have a number, then Pega will automatically filter out characters. It'll tell you that it's invalid or it won't let you type it in. Possible values is I have that drop down, or I have radio buttons, or I have list box, then I'm limiting what you can select. And then business logic allows me to do anything. I can then set that. All right. So remember, we have the ability to do validation. We do validation, and that validation says, what actions do you want me to take? What conditionals do you want me to check here? And what is the message you want me to send if something is invalid? In this case, it's saying that digit is not greater than 100, so enter digits greater than 100. Right? If you only enter 100, that's an error because it's not greater than. So we use a validation rule to do that. Right? We use our validation rule so that we can determine when information is being entered into a form if it is accurate and correct. A validation form. And that validation form is on the stage. So I put it on the stage because I can validate any field on any step in any process of that particular stage. So you can go to one place and you can put all your validations there. So let's go into here. Let's go back to, well, you know what? Let's see if I've created a validate. Yeah, let's just look at this. Here's a validate rule that's already been created. So I'm staying in Dev Studio. I'm not going to App Studio and creating validate off the form. But when that is created, then it will appear as a rule here, enter payment information. So you're going to see the rule. It was created in App Studio. I can see its configuration and implementation in Dev Studio. So in App Studio, it was created. It was of validate rule type. The label is enter payment information. You see the availabilities, 7 availabilities, so it is available. It is applied to the assistance request class. Its ID is enter payment information. It's in the Go-Go Road or 10101 rule set. It is not locked. We don't see a locked on it. These are the different configuration tabs on the rules form for the validate rule. And this is the property that I'm validating on. Now notice I can add additional properties. So it's not a one property to one validate rule. One validate rule can have multiple properties, because remember that validate rule is probably on the stage, and that stage probably has multiple assignments and they need to be validated. And at that point in time, the system will, by the validate rule, identify the property that needs to be validated and validate it. And typically, validation occurs when they hit the enter key. So a UI comes up, you enter information. When you hit the enter key, then that information is posted to the server. When it's posted to the server, it executes the validate rule to determine which properties need to be evaluated. If a property fails the test, then Pega will display the UI again with the error message. If all properties pass the test, then it goes on to the next step in the flow. All right, so now let's go back to, I can set the condition. Here's an edit. Let's go back and look at the rule here, how you actually go in and set it up. So this is what you typically see on the App Studio. They give you information about, now it will preset the actual value when you type it in, or you can select it. And then they'll say, well, what type of function am I trying to create? Well, it's a rule, it's a when record. And it's going to evaluate if it's true. When it's true, then it's going to say enter payment information. Now, we can dig a little bit deeper. You can see this. This is saying enter payment information message. So this is actually a different rule where I can contain a message inside of it. I can put my message in double quotes into a string, or I can put it into a message rule type. In my message rule type, you see that I can specify what message that I wanted to say. So again, messages can be stored in just a string of text type, or we can create an actual rule called a message rule. So this is payment information. Let's go back to our App Studio. Our App Studio, let's go back to stages and steps here. Let's get all the way back to our case workflow. Okay. And so let's see. Let's go and click here. Trying to see where it set the validation. Validate request. System is moving slow. Come on, come on, come on. Don't see it there. Oh, wow. Okay. It's getting into this. Let's see, payment information. I don't know. Okay, here. This is where it's probably setting it. So let's go into payment information. Let's click on this UI. Let's go into configure view. Hold on. Now watch this. So I go to payment information. This is a step. I go to configure view. And I believe that it's going to give me moving really slow. Trying to show you the validation. So be patient with the system here. Yikes. Go to condition. And here's a validation rule. Validate these fields. Okay. So this is what it would look like if I need to create a condition. All right, I can specify, and that will create a validation rule. So I apologize that it took that long to get there, but you guys should be aware of how the system works sometimes. But in the App Studio, you can go in and you can configure the validation. It creates the validation rule. So it selects the rule type for you, the validate rule type. It allows you to enter in that information. So it's updating the form. You save it. Now it's configured and it's implemented at that location in the flow. All right, so that's data validation. The next subject, now there's a exercise or challenge that you need to do with that. Should be relatively short. Let's go in and take a look at it. I want to make sure that I cover all of the information for you so you're comfortable enough to go in and quickly get it done so you can sit and take the mission test. So in this case, they're asking you to customer has a standard credit card, pay for services, ensure that the credit card transaction is processed properly. Make sure it identifies expiration date so you know it has to be in a certain format, that it must be in the future. So you have to use some business logic, validation rule to make that happen. The process cannot continue until the user provides valid expiration date. So they'll have you do something fairly simple. Go to the condition. I just showed you how to get to that condition for a particular assignment or UI, and to configure the validate information that creates a validate rule. Notice in assignment in App Studio, they always have additional information or prompts to help you. Normally in the rule itself, there are no prompts. You have to make sure that you know what you're doing. You'll select the values, you'll confirm your work, make sure that it is of some future date. I believe that's what they were saying, time period by day, value today. So it is before. So if the expiration date is before today's date, then you're going to give an error that says expiration date is not valid. Very simple, easy to do, right? So let's return back to our mission. Oh, that's oh, back into low code app builder extended. All right, so the next is application data manipulation. Two topics that's going to cover the data transform. Let's take a look at it. Data transform default property values. So data transform gives you the capability to modify information that you have in memory, what we call on the clipboard, as you're working through your case flow during runtime. So we have data transforms that will allow you to do that. Here's information in one account. You may want to enter that information. After you've captured that information, you may want to modify it, append it, calculate it. This is where you would do it. So you would apply a data transform rule. You can find that data transform as one of the automations. Run data transform. Here's a run data transform. In this case, it's only converting a string to date. So if you've done any type of programming, Python, C#, C++, you always have to translate data, maybe from a decimal to a string, or from a string to currency, some type of translation. So we have capabilities to where you can do that. In this case, you want to run a data transform. You just want to convert a string to a date. Right. You can do that in the pre-processing and post-processing. Typically, when an assignment is displayed, when a UI is displayed, what you want to do is, before that assignment or screen is displayed, you may want to do some pre-processing. You may want to gather information from the previous step and manipulate it so that when it's displayed on the UI, then that information is formatted a certain way. Or another use case is, after you hit the enter key and it's passed all the validation, then it does post-processing. So it calls a data transform to allow you to do that. When do I use a data transform? Typically on a UI for pre-processing or post-processing. Before the screen is displayed, after the screen is dismissed. Now, you can use it throughout your workflow any other time. You can just call the run data transform. You'll be used in several places. But that pre and post condition, if I can get back there, now that I've done it once, it shouldn't take me as long to get in because I've gone through rules resolution. It should be a bit faster. Maybe. Here we go. Go back into my configure rule, configure view. And you see here's my pre and post processing. Which gives me the capability, prior to the UI coming up, I can specify a data transform. Here we go. And I can only specify one, create a new data transform because I have no data transforms there. Okay. Post means after my UI is dismissed, I hit the enter key, it's dismissed, it's passed all validation, and then it's going to execute post-processing a data transform. If I create a data transform, let's see if I can do that quickly. Check payment information. So I'm going to create a data transform called check payment information. And I want that to happen before the UI comes up. So that's why I put it in the pre-processing. I can go and edit it now. I won't fully configure it. I just want to show you that when I click on the gadget, I can go in and do an edit. And it gives me a view of the rules form, just enough for me to fill it in. Here's my action. Remember, I have all type of actions I can do. I can set, remove, update, apply, sort. I can do conditional checking when otherwise. I can append and map, and I can do iterations or indexing over a collection of objects. In App Studio, I get this portion of the rules form, just enough to do what I need to do. I have a target, a relation, and a source. Think of this as, in its simplest form, as a big assignment statement, like the equal sign. I want to assign, here I have a variable name equals, and in double quote, I put Darryl or Jose or Jesus. So Jesus would be my source. Well, let's see, I would have to add additional line first. Hold on. Yeah. So I do a set, and I'd say that would be my source, and my property. I don't have a name. Maybe I do have a name, but I'll hit my drop down and I'll say customers, their customer name. Oh, I'll say customer ID. I'll have to fix it so that it doesn't give me an error. Customer ID, I'll change customer ID to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How's that? So in the simplest form, what did I do? I created a new data transform, gave it a name. It gave me enough of the rules form to allow me to configure it. And then when I save it, it saves it and implements it in its particular can't convert integers. So what does it have to do? Invalid expression, customer ID. Maybe it's a 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's a string. Let's see if I can save it as a string. I don't know the data type. Okay. So ID happened to be a string, and I can submit it. And remember, pre means that it'll happen before this payment information comes up. I want to make sure I get the right customer ID. If it's that right customer ID, then and only then do I want it to come up. Okay. If I wanted to change to see what it looked like in Dev Studio, I know that based upon the context of App Studio, it's at the work class. So I know that it's in assist request. But now I need to know which rule type it is. I created a data transform. I have to know that it's in the data model category. Data model category, I have data transform rule types. In data transform rule types, there is my check payment information that I created. Now I'm actually in the rule itself. And you see that The rule type is data transform. The label name is check payment information. Availability, all 7 availabilities are there. It is applied to the work class assign request that's associated with the case type. Its ID name, check payment information, and the rule set go road 010101, major, minor, patch. I have my tabs of configuration. When I was in App Explorer, I didn't see all of this. But when I get into Dev Explorer or Dev Studio, sorry, not App Studio, I didn't see all of this information. Get into Dev Studio, I see all of the tabs of information for the rules form. The only thing that I saw in App Studio was the definition configuration tab. So it gave me just enough to configure the rule. If I needed to do more, like pass in parameters from another source, then I need to get into Dev Studio. If I need to use pages and classes because I have other objects in memory that I need to utilize, then I need to add them to my memory space. But here in my definition, you then see it. And I can what? I can then go again to say, I can look at the Java. If I'm not quite sure how to configure it, I can even go to get help. And it will bring up only the data transform help document and show you how to define each one of the tabs for configuration. I can look to see if it has any more siblings. So that means, remember, if it's stored in another rule set or in another class, then siblings, the system will find all the siblings for me. I can see if it's referenced. Where is it referenced in Pega? It'll show me every place that it is referenced. Here it's in these 2 classes or class hierarchy, and it's this one property that's being referenced. So I get all of this rule-based information. And then when I save it, as before, I can save it to the same class or in rule set, or I can save it to a different class or a different rule set, or I can create circumstancing by saying I want to pass additional information, and only when this additional information is passed, I want to call that variant rule versus the default base rule. All right, so let's go back to App Studio and let's take a look at the next topic. The next topic, what if I need to initialize properties at the beginning of my case? How do I do that? Typically in other traditional languages, Java, not really Python because they don't really have initialization routines, but C++, C#, when you instantiate the object, it's going to initialize the attributes or the information. So where does that occur? Since we do use Java, and that's part of the application execution cycle to say when I am initiated, when I am constructed, created, then where do I go and initialize properties? And this is before we get into user pages coming up, different things coming up, and I can do it while I'm on a particular page. I can make it happen. But here in my initialization, I can go to case type settings tab in App Studio, and you'll see that there is a py set fields default that you can initialize values. PY default set. So let's see if we can find that on the case type setting. Okay, let's bring that up. It's in my data initialization section. Now, notice this is at the top. So this is meaning that this is associated for the entire workflow. Data initialization. Give it time to come up. Click on data initialization. And you need to remember the name of this property. Remember, it's a system property. It's PY. PY means it is an updatable property. Remember PX, PY, PZ, PX, PZ, read only, PY, updatable. Right? So I can select a field, PY, see if we can find it, PY. Oh, I forgot the name of it. Hold on. Go back here. PY set field default. PY set field default. Did it find it? Come on. Dang, it doesn't find that item. Okay. Select a field. Well, let's just select a different field for right now. So let's select this field. So for this field, I can then set a given value for it. And so once that value, so that says that at the beginning of the execution of my case type, not one of my processes, not one of my steps, but at the beginning of the workflow, I'm going to set these values. So that says data initialization when a case is created. So think of this as a constructor. If you're familiar with other languages, think of this. This is happening during construction. You have when you are instantiating an object, you call a constructor. The constructor phase does the initialization. So think of this as similar to that initialization. Now, typically what happens when that is created, that PY fields default, it's going to show up in, where is it? It's actually going to show up as a data transform, but there is no PY set up. Let's see, why is it not there? No, it's not there. So typically, if you want to do initialization, you could then create it as a data transform. In that data transform, you would call that PY set fields default to do that. But the easiest place, of course, is to go to your studio and go to settings and set it there. So this will allow you to do the initialization of system using one of the system properties. Okay, and that's it for that. So I think that covers all of the sections. Let's make sure. So if you followed me, went through all of that, all you have to do is go back and answer the module quiz. Take 30 minutes to do the challenges. Oh, here's a configure form. So let's go to configure form. There's only one topic that you have to complete. And this is not any new information whatsoever. This talks about templates forms. Again, you get into the workflow tab, display, consolation. Here's your forms. You can add your fields. Go to your UI tab. We have list, partial, inform, templates. We have the different templates that you can set. So that's not new information. Your layout allows you to group that information as the hierarchical forms like we showed in BAE. And that's it. So again, no new information here, merely a review. You go back, read through it, probably don't even have to read through it, do the module quiz, and you're good for that section. And that's it. So those are the only modules and challenges that you have to do. Hopefully that helped you along the way. I've covered all the information. You're good to go. Do the module quizzes, take that test before this evening, and upload the information. That's all I have. We've spent about an hour and a half. So I'll give you 30 minutes back to get some of the work done. Maybe you can do the exercises before the end of the hour. Thank you for your time, and I will see you this evening at 6 p.m. Have a wonderful day.